Badger fans, we got another one. We are wearing, as the comments say in the chat, we are wearing out those recruiting cannons. Hilton pops for the Badgers. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Posa. Let's talk about what's next. Let's talk about the job this staff and this recruiting group has done for the Badgers from the cabin on Wisconsin, and let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you for tuning in. As always, really do appreciate you. Thank you so much for making us a small part of your day. Whether you're driving to work, whether you're at work, watching at work, it's all good. I don't care. Just don't let the boss find out. We got Rajiv with us. Obviously, everyone knows Rajiv. We had a couple sound bites to play. The first one, I think we play both of them today, Rajiv. I think we play.
Badgers winning a national title? Absolutely. Going on Final Four runs? Why not? It's Believe with Rajiv on today's Locked On Badgers.
And then, we got to fire the cannons for Hilton.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
All right, let's set the stage. Eugene Hilton Jr. commits to the Badgers, 6'2", about 195-ish, coming out of Indiana. Everyone knows the name. Everyone knows the dad, all-time great receiver for the Colts. Rajiv, this was like your guy, I think, more than before maybe Justin and I fully got on board with this. Talk to me about the commitment from Hilton.
Man, I'll tell you what, this is a good day. It's a good day all around, by the way. I just want to say I'm off of work. I just got off the golf course. The European Championships are starting for those who watch soccer. At the beginning of OVs, I said Eugene Hilton and Mason Posa were the two top guys that I wanted. And look what's happened. And by the way, it's going to be it's Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to you. We're both fathers. Justin's a father. He's going to be joining us hopefully soon. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are listening to us right now. With that, yeah. Man, I'm so pumped for Hilton. He's just, gosh, his film is great. I'm so happy with the staff right now, Ryan. I just feel like everything is kind of hitting it. You're right. Like this is that big moment after OVs are done. We've landed a few big recruits. Hilton's that guy. And I want to say that when I first started watching his film, I did not know he was T.Y.'s son, like the whole time that we were looking. I just didn't connect it. I was more just looking at the name and looking at the film. Man, he tracks the ball so well. He's just got that elite route running ability that just shows up on film. And you can see that. And he's got that pedigree. And it's just such a nice ad for Wisconsin. I feel like I like the other receivers that we have in this class. I like the Cam Millers and these people, but I just feel like Hilton, for me, has elite receiver attributes and skills that really translate. And he has that next level ability, the way he tracks the ball, the way he adjusts to the ball, the way that he runs his routes, how crisp he is, how he can read everything really well. I just feel like that can translate really well. We need another outside guy to kind of fill that room. I'm extremely pumped about this, man. This is awesome. And by the way, he's from Indiana. Let's go.
Let's go. No, it's funny. Before I even get into Hilton, and I agree with a ton of what you said there, I've often, when I get like the recruiting guys on the show, whether it's Garcia from Rivals, whether it's Brian Smith, whether it's McNamara, whoever it is, I'm always like, what does it feel? And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we're recruiting like Ohio State or Georgia, but a lot of these times these recruiting guys are going to other schools and they're like, I'm going to talk about Ohio State recruiting next. I'm like, what is that like? What is it like to get a bunch of wins from A-list guys? And they're always like, it's pretty good. This kind of feels like a diet version of that, right? Like it's not Ohio State, but it is so elevated from, and this is, always want to be careful with this. This is not me crushing the previous staff. It's really not. But we weren't landing these type of athletes and getting wins. This is a 4-star receiver that had a Georgia offer. Like Georgia is legitimately interested in Hilton. And you can argue the veracity of that. But Georgia legitimately was interested in his receiver. We don't get 4-star receivers out of state with Georgia offers or Georgia interests. We don't get linebackers that have visits set up to Oregon. I know we're going to talk about Post in a second. And they shut down the visit basically before. Like we're recruiting at a different level because we're winning battles that we didn't used to win. And it feels good. It feels exciting.
Next level athletes, next level pedigree. That's what we're seeing now. And that's what Fickell's bringing. It's that whole culture change. And yeah, I mean, and down the list, if you look down the recruiting staff list, like every one of these assistant coaches is killing it, from Blazik to Haynes to Guiton, like you name it, Mitchell, they're all just doing really well. They're bringing good guys. They're selling this program. They're selling a vision of Luke Fickell's vision of what this program can be. If you listen to Posa yesterday, he talked about, I mean, it's obviously a lot of hyperbole, but he's like, look, I'm going to win national championships at this program. And does that mean it's going to happen while he's here? Probably not. But you know what? that's what these guys are like. That's the belief that Luke Fickell's putting in his players. Like, we can be a championship team. Like, we can have that. We're coming to get you because you can take us there. And these guys, like, it's great to see this athleticism. It's changing everything that we've been seeing for year after year at Wisconsin. And it just means that, like, we always talked about how we were happy that Fickell was them coming in and how he was going to change things, but we had to see it on the recruiting side. And this is now cycle number 2 for him. And you're seeing the benefits of that. Like, look at our recruiting rankings, and they'll change. And we talked about that a little bit too, and who knows, but look at where we are. Look at the guys we're bringing in. Like, this is, like you put in the show notes here, exciting times. Like, I mean, this is great to see. And you can look across the board, across the positions, and look at all those athletes in the rooms. It's great to see.
Yeah, ZYT number 5 in the recruiting rankings, I believe, on Rivals. Zach Bartz also puts that up there. According to Rivals, we have the number 5 overall class. That's huge. I will caution that that's going to drop a little bit, and that's fine. We have more commitments in some of the schools around us. This is not me being a wet blanket. Like, Wisconsin's going to finish with I'd be shocked if they don't finish with a top 20-ish class, which is really good for Wisconsin. And it's building, right? It's all building. Wait until this program, these players start to mature and this program starts winning, and they sell not only their vision and what they can do for development, but they sell winning at Wisconsin. You can take another step up. But yeah, like this class is trending so well. I do want to talk about Hilton a little bit. I think you hit a lot of it. The parts I would add, he has so much nuance, right? As a prospect that you don't see from a lot of high schoolers. Obviously, you can tell he comes from that type of pedigree. Plays where he's tracking the ball. Justin, Rajiv, you talked about this. You see a lot of receivers, and you and I have talked about this offline. You see a lot of receivers on deep balls in high school level because their quarterback underthrows them, that they stop. They almost like fall over to catch the ball. Hilton has like this center fielder, like Andrew Jones-ish type ability to kind of slow down the pace, catch it, and then accelerate and not lose steps. Route running is incredible. Stop and go. He's sharp. He's crisp. And then it's the contested catches. How long have we talked about all these slot receivers are great? And they are. That's no hyperbole. But we need a 6'2" physical guy who can go make some contested catches on the boundary. There you go.
And the strong hands too. I mean, you obviously contested catches, that comes into play. Like, you've seen this on film. Like, he's got really good hands, and he's got that ability. And that's another thing. And it's nice to have that on the outside, just like you said. And now we've got, again, we're just kind of building this. And we've got slot guys that are coming in, right? And that are there now. We've got outside guys now. And I mean, it's just that pedigree just keeps going up. But yeah, I want to say TY, but obviously Eugene, but it's good. And by the way, the TY thing, the pedigree is really there. Like, the reason that his routes are as crisp as they are, and the way he's learned from the best. Like, I'm a Colts fan. I know T.Y. Hilton. I know everything about him, and as far as his game, and the guy was incredible. He's a great route runner. I mean, he ran routes like Marvin Harrison could run routes. The way he got open, like, it's special to watch, and you can see that coming out in what Eugene's doing. And yeah, I mean, gosh, you're so right about like an out-of-state guy with Georgia offers. That was never coming to Paul Chryst. That was never happening before. And the fact that we've got that excites Badger fans through and through, right?
100%. And, after the catch, he's got some juice after the catch too. Like, he's pretty quick laterally. He makes people miss. Like, this is a guy who can get some yak yardage as well. And there's also just this intrinsic value, this underlying value of nationally, right? If you're a recruit, if you're a high school coach, if you are covering the program or covering recruiting in general, this is kind of like royalty. You landed a Hilton at Wisconsin. People are talking about that because Wisconsin landed a Hilton, right? Like that name has cachet nationally. And it's very cool to see Wisconsin in those sentences.
I mean, it like literally warms my heart to think about stuff like that. It's just exciting, right? I mean, it's just, yeah, this is great. This is fun to see. And it's got to translate to the field. And that's the other side of recruiting that we, right now we're just pumped about this, but there's the field translation and see how that works. But I just feel like you're getting like a sort of strategy in place, right? You're getting a commitment to recruiting and what we're doing and changing out how it's done. And I feel like that's how you take those steps to be the next level. And, we've had debates offline, online about how high the ceiling really can be for Luke Fickell in general, not just this season. And I feel like this is the steps you take. I've always said that I feel like Luke Fickell can take us to be the next Clemson if things are played right. I'm not saying we're there or anywhere near there yet, but these are the steps you want to see along the way. It's just that these are the things that need to happen in order for you to start growing your program.
Yeah, you hit on it, right? Yeah, you building the foundation, and you building it 2 classes in a row now. And you can even argue the way they came in at the end of that abbreviated season, the way they finished that class off was about as good as you could, right? Considering their time frame. So you're going on 2.5 cycles of this looks really strong. This looks like they understand how to build a foundation, which shouldn't surprise anybody considering they did that at Cincinnati. All right, we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back, talk about that ceiling, talk about what they did on the official visits, talk about Mason Posa, and then get some of your comments coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, we do need to get to a quick break for our friends in the show over at eBay Motors. Listen, I've talked to Rajiv about this. He's not the guy going to be under the hood, turning the wrenches. So Rajiv can go to eBay Motors. Listen, upgrade your radio, upgrade your sound system, maybe get some floor mats, maybe get something for the windows, right? You can do all of that over at eBay Motors. Justin's not on the show, but Justin doesn't really like people. He can use eBay Motors to go and buy online and don't have to deal with anybody. So this is perfect for the higher elevated life form in Rajiv, who's not going to be turning the wrenches. It's perfect for the guy who doesn't really like people in Justin. It's perfect for the guy like me in between. I'm not quite as civilized as Rajiv. I like people a little better than Justin, and I'll turn a wrench. eBay Motors is here for all of you, no matter what you need to do. Over 122 million parts for your ride or die. Whatever you need, the right parts, the right fit, the right prices. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Go over there now. Find the perfect fit for your ride or die. Rajiv, let's talk Posa. So I did a quick show with John McNamara on Mason Posa, obviously committed linebacker, 4-star, Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a human wrecking ball. But you haven't been on. Thoughts on Posa? Something that you and I both thought was, neither of us were surprised by it, but still excited by it.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like prototypical sort of Wisconsin middle linebacker that's got that game-breaking ability, disruption ability that can change games and become a pro, by the way. He absolutely has that pro ceiling, the way he chases down the play. One thing that I always note is like disruptive plays with quick moves and high levels of aggression. He plays so aggressive, right? The way that you watch his film any year that you look at, there's just sacks all across the board. He's chasing down plays. He's never quitting on anything. He moves so fast laterally. I just feel like his sideline to sideline speed is there. We've talked about that with our linebackers last year. You don't have that closeout ability speed getting to the sideline. You're going to get outrun by the running backs. He has that. He can make those plays. And I'm really like, I'm not surprised because I just feel like, the recruiting staff has been winning again. Tressel, Mitchell, amazing work here, like amazing work. And like when you're talking about his offer list is ridiculous, by the way. Like there's insane schools that he had a chance to go to. And there was a sort of an Oregon visit or not an Oregon visit. And there was A&M that was in the mix and all these schools. And he chose Wisconsin. He's from New Mexico. He's a West Coast guy. And he didn't stay on the West Coast, which is a big deal. Like I live on the West Coast. People here, like it's a pretty great place to live in general. And I'm saying like Oregon, that's a pull to a lot of people that grow up out here. And I just feel like, the fact that he's coming to Madison, what does that say about what this staff has done? I think Mason Posa is amazing. I can't wait to watch him play. I feel like he absolutely is a guy. By the way, something we don't really talk about a lot, his special team impact could be really strong, by the way, right? And anything from like kick coverage, punt coverage, everything. Like he really has that breaking ability. He moves so quickly. He clearly has good head on his shoulders. His attitude seems great. And that kind of hard work is really paying off for him. And yeah, I'm absolutely stoked. These two guys, I said at the beginning, these are the two guys that I wanted the most before when OV started. And we got them both.
Yeah, he checked so many boxes, right? And you went through them. It's the film looks incredible. The offer list checks out. The physical attributes are there. Like he checks all the boxes. And the linebacker special teams point you made, we talked about that last year's cycle with guys like Lafayette and Heiberger. Like these guys, and even some of the younger transfers you brought in with like Sebastian Cheeks, these guys are going to improve all your special teams, all your coverage units. They're going to play right away, and then they're going to work themselves into the defense. He reminds me a little bit of, and you and I talked about Tackett Curtis's high school film. It reminds me a little bit of Posa's, just destroying every single human being. And then his mentality reminds me a little bit of Lafayette, right? Another kind of West Coast kid who just feels like more of a Midwestern guy in culture. Mm-hmm. He feels like, I give a crap about football. I'm a dog. I don't care about weather. I'm going to go to a place that I know I can develop. I'm not worried about the glitz and the glamour. I want to go play Big Ten football and get dirty. And it feels kind of like a merge of those players.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I mean, I feel like that's true. And he does have that, like that Midwestern sort of vibe, and that wanting to get better. And you've heard some of these guys talking about the development of the program. They want to develop and they see that. And it's special. And yeah, I mean, this guy, like, definitely league potential for sure. I'm sure you would agree. Like the way that he moves, I feel like. And by the way, we talk about this a few times on the show. Think about what him and Eugene Hilton, for that matter, they get with Brady Collins. Like, they're getting one of the best strength and conditioning guys out there. They're getting someone who continues to develop guys physically. Imagine a Mason Posa with time with Brady Collins, and what can that do for his game right away? How soon do you think he can play? I mean, I feel like the guy, obviously our linebacker room is pretty stacked, and that's good, but I can see this guy's second year at Wisconsin, he's seeing major minutes out there.
And that's why you get kids like this, right? This is the whole thing. I think the paradigm really switched, Rajiv. And I was thinking about this the other day. Wisconsin hasn't just switched recruiting from a certain type of player to another. And again, this is not me killing the old staff. The old staff recruited incredible linebackers. Like, well, who are we talking about? Like the linebacker, this is linebacker U for a while. But we kind of were in a wait and develop mode. And the players we're bringing in now, I think they're coming in to compete, right? And this is more modern college football, right? You come in, you compete, and that competition is going to lead to some transfers. It's going to lead to some roster shakeup, but you're going to see more going forward, more redshirt freshmen playing than we ever previously did, because you're bringing in guys like Mason Posa, because you're bringing in guys like Eugene Hilton. The whole paradigm shifts with this.
Yeah, and it shifts in the right way. That's what you want to see, that youth development. And then so by the time they're seniors, what kind of production are we getting out of them, right? I mean, that's just efficient way to manage your roster. We talk a lot about roster management and development with Paul Chris and guys like, we talk about it with Greg Gard and what he does. And that's true. Like, getting these guys in here playing early, getting guys that are ready, their bodies are ready. And yeah, I mean, think about the guys in the last two cycles. Like last year when we talked about like Amari Snowden and things like, there's just so many guys that you're like, yeah, the athleticism, the sheer raw talent that they have allows them to play earlier, like a Jamel Howard, who we haven't really seen play early, but things like that, like those kinds of unique abilities that can execute quickly.
Now, to your point, I think you're at the point in the next year or two, you got to start showing it, right? Because I've talked to recruits, right, and a couple of them, and they've talked about the staff has sold the vision. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to be. Eventually, you can't sell that vision anymore. You've nailed it. You said it has to show up on the field. I have no reason to think it's not going to. Bo Dragon says, I think the defense will be top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten regularly from now on, considering the Big Ten's 18 teams and the quality of it. That's high praise from Bo Dragon. But yeah, to Bo's point, now it's got to start showing up on the field. And if it does, I think this staff takes in even another step up in recruiting, because now you can sell the results on the field as well.
Yeah, Bo Dragon had another comment that I want to put up there. Fickell's earning his money as a recruiter. Now he has to get W's, not lose back-to-back to Northwestern Indiana. That's exactly the point. And it's, and it was tough last year to see that, and to be as excited as we were going into the year. Certainly we were all hyped and led that hype train, drove that hype train through, but it didn't materialize. We saw steps, we saw things that improved, but now we've got to translate that, which I have every confidence that we will. And I think that, it's interesting. We talked about upside, we've talked about a number of wins and where they can actually go. But I feel like obviously these guys we're talking about today are not going to be here, but I do think that we're going to see a lift on the field as well this year. We've seen that lift in recruiting. Recruiting should translate. And a guy like Luke Fickell, who, by the way, remember, took Cincinnati to the playoff, that means that recruiting did translate to on-the-field production, and I have every reason to believe that it will. And even if there's reason not to believe, I'm certainly going to believe that we're going to do it. And I'm going to sit here in August and talk about how we're going to win 11 games, which I'm not actually going to say, but,
Are you sure?
Yes,
Are you sure? Are you sure you're not going to say that after a good fall practice? There's going to be people excited. We're going to see good things. You sure you're not going to be on 11?
I think it's going to be really hard for me to go above 9 just because of the schedule. I mean, there's so many good teams on, and a lot of those, and I've said a lot of those good teams are at home. So we do have the ability, we have a ceiling that's higher, but I mean, yeah, nine wins to me would be a stellar year given the teams that we're going to be facing.
Let me ask you this, and this is a side tangent, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I want to get what you think the recruiting ceiling is. There's more recruiting talk here. Obviously, Posa and Hilton back-to-back, that's huge news. But do you actually think Camp Randall is a massive home field advantage anymore?
This is a touchy subject for me because when I was going to school there, I believe that it really was, which was in the early 2000s. I think that the way that their students, actually, if you talked about before, what's happening with it is difficult and needs to be changed. And I think that's a big part of the impact. Other than that, once it's there, once the students are there and once that energy is there, yeah, I think it absolutely is a good home field advantage and strong. Is it Big House worthy or Columbus worthy or even Penn State for that matter? No, not to be honest, no. But I think that the students getting there and fixing that problem will benefit from that. And I think it will improve it, but it's not bad. It is a very good home field advantage. And I think there is something there, but it's not what it used to be. And I hate to say that, but it's just that to me, that's the reality. And the Kohl Center is the same way, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it is what the national media writes that it is, right? Like when you see the national rankings come out and the toughest home environments to play in or the rowdiest crowds, it feels like Wisconsin is always a few spots higher than I feel like it probably should be, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But it's still good. It's still really good, especially for afternoon kicks, for night kicks. It's a very good environment.
Yeah. I mean, having jump around obviously sets that. I mean, people like sort of think about that when they think about our student section. So therefore they notch it up a little bit. So I think that's probably where that bias comes from. But yeah, night games. I mean, listen, if we can stop getting 11 o'clock kickoffs for games like Alabama, that would be nice.
Agreed. Jason now and Hilton equals Cephas. Thoughts?
I like that, actually. I was trying to think about some different Badger comps from him. I think Cephas obviously was a great player that Hilton would have to develop into. But I think from a raw talent perspective and to say that, yeah, that's the kind of ceiling we could see from Hilton. Sure. I think that's great. And I think the skills do kind of match his ability to high point, his ability to adjust and make those plays and crisp route running. Yeah. I mean, that to me looks like a Cephas.
So I would say, I think Cephas was a little more yoked up. Like he was always going to be a little more physical, probably a little slower. I feel like he's got some Aberdaris just in the route running, but he's tall. He's not Aberdaris Hilton, but he's got that type of route running and finesse. And he reminds me more of like maybe a taller Aberdaris, which Aberdaris is a 5th round pick like that. If he's a taller Aberdaris, like he's a 2nd, 3rd round pick, maybe if he hits his ceiling, which not everybody does, obviously. I look at him more like that type of receiver, though, a little more physical, bigger Aberdaris.
Yeah, I can see that. I would say closer to Cephas than Aberdaris for me, just because I hear what you're saying about Cephas being a more like physical, but I think that he was a pretty good route runner too, and I feel like that crisp routes could be there. But it's a good discussion. I did think about Aberdaris as well, but I ultimately feel like he's not really quite Aberdaris yet. But
I love that we're just comparing him to NFL receivers.
I know.
We took out our it's kind of a small Rolodex of recent NFL Badger receivers, and we're like, let's pick out a couple. There's only a couple that we did talk about.
His dad's T.Y. Hilton, you know?
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, talk about what this recruiting ceiling could be. What's next, right? A few other prospects that are still out there, and get some of your comments. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. A quick break to say thank you to everybody tuning in. Really do appreciate y'all. Obviously, a quick second to say thank you to Rajiv for jumping on as well. These are exciting times. It's fun to be a Badgers fan when recruiting is going well. It's fun to be a college football fan when recruiting is going well. All right, Rajiv, let's jump on. There's a couple comments in here, and I already lost the one I starred, but recruiting ceiling, right now, Rivals has his class 5th. I think on the 247 composite, it's 12th. We looked before the show, but I forgot. So it's top 12-ish. What do you think we finish at? And I've already kind of said I think it's probably going to be more like 18, 17, 19, somewhere in that range, because there's a lot of schools who don't have quite as many recruits that we do that historically recruit pretty well that are going to fill up. We're more full than a lot of those other schools right now, which inflates our ranking.
It's a very good point, and it's kind of made me rethink what I was going to say, but I'm still going to say top 15 for me. And I think that, of course, shocker, I'm more optimistic, but I think that first of all, I think that we've talked about this a little bit on the Bucky Report. We've got a lot of these guys that are going to eventually become 4 stars. I think their ratings are going to go up when their senior film hits. And I think there will be some improvement in this class. I'm not 100% sold that a school like Penn State is going to really jump us. I think, you had mentioned a little bit before the show, Rutgers is a team that's ranked higher for now, will fall. But there are teams, I agree with you, like the Texases of the world, the Tennessees of the world. Yeah, they are going to jump, and that's going to be there. But I think our class, and by the way, there's still guys out there, guys like Hardy Watts that, we've talked about that will really elevate this class even further. No, we're not going to go out there and get any 5 stars to compete with those top guys. But I do think that the collection of 4 stars that could end up being listed here with elevations and changes to their grades, I think we absolutely could be top 15. I don't think it's a guaranteed situation that we're going to have all these teams jump us. Although I do hear you on the number of recruits. They should, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get these great guys because look, I mean, you don't think Oregon wanted Posa? I mean, I feel like that some of those battles, we've won some of those battles.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Just historically, those schools recruit at a certain level. You know, you look at like Michigan, for example, right? They're lower, they're in the 20s, but they have 7 recruits and they're all 4 stars. They're not going to fill up with all 4 stars, but it's likely that they're going to keep adding pretty quality players there. Same with several schools below us.
I also want to point out and get your take on this. I feel like the transfer portal has affected some of this in a little bit ways too, because some of these teams like Oregon, certainly Ohio State, like they've crushed it in the portal. But I wonder if some of these guys, some of these bigger schools, knowing that so it's a 1-year commitment nowadays, pretty much for any college player, they can sell their success every year and get people in the transfer portal. Are they? I mean, I know recruiting is still an important part of what they're doing, but do they maybe focus more on the transfer portal and less on building their classes from scratch? So maybe they don't jump us as much as they do because they know ultimately they can go get whatever guy they want from a Big Ten school that's not, the upper echelon.
It's an interesting point. And I think every school is probably a little different, right? Like that'd probably be worth tracking to see if you could see some trends with, but I would say this. The people with the most money usually go into the store and they buy whatever they want from both aisles.
Fair.
Right? Like I think the Oregons are going to be like, yeah, we'll get who we want in the portal, but we're also going to get who we want in the high school ranks. And using Oregon as a fill in for Ohio State, Texas, LSU, Georgia, Alabama. I think you're just going to clean up on both sides of the aisle for the most part.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I think that's a good way to look at it. But I think that there is something to it. And you're right. It would be interesting to track and kind of just see what changes actually happen because the portal really it's a whole wild, wild west out there now.
Well, it's interesting. We're going to talk about kind of what's next for the Badgers. But that's an interesting point because it makes me wonder how the portal has affected Luke Fickell and Wisconsin's recruiting as well. And I think if there's one lesson you take from it, I'm sure there's many, but the first one, it's too hard to get portal defensive linemen. So you got to get high school kids if you're Wisconsin, because we've seen it, right? So I think if you look at this class, we're very excited. That's still the one spot where you're kind of like, it's great that Petaway flipped, but that's
Speaking
the one
of
spot.
What's next. That's
what's next. So I want to get into that. That's my attempt at a segue here. Who's the one recruit left on the board that you want the most, like you're most excited by, but also who's the one recruit on the board that you think is the most important for Wisconsin to get?
Yeah, I feel like based on film, I'm excited about Watts because I just feel like his film is incredible. I talked about it a lot on the other show. I just think he's what got that sort of next level ability. But I think what's most important is a guy like Wilnerson, just because we need bodies up front and on the defensive side of the ball. And Petaway, great. Thank you for not playing at that silly, dumb school up north. But this is where he belongs. So that's great. But yeah, you need more. So importance, because we got 19 guys, right? So we're going to get four or five more probably. Well, you got to get some D linemen as part of that. So I'm going to go Wilnerson because I like what he brings. I like his potential. And I think that's the kind of guy that you need the most.
Yeah. You out of the next 3 or 4 recruits, you got to finish with at least 2 more defensive linemen. I think you want at least 3 in this class. I would like 4 because I'm just greedy on the defensive line. To me, it's Byron Lewis. If you're talking like one recruit that you're most excited about just by the film, I love Watts. I think Byron Lewis is a stud. He's from American Heritage. It's one of the elite programs in the entirety of college football. So if you went down to Florida the year after you pulled Xavier Lucas away from Miami as a cornerback, and then you pulled Byron Lewis from American Heritage with Florida State and Miami, like dead after him with Georgia after him. You could argue that would be the most impressive recruiting win of the Fickell era. Not the most important, but maybe the most impressive. And I love the film. So Byron Lewis is that guy, but I'm 100% with you on the defensive line. From an importance standpoint, I actually like a couple of the guys visiting this weekend, like a Drayden Pavey, who is not, I don't think, and I said this to McNamara, I don't think he has the most impressive film necessarily of the guys out there, but he's 6'3", 300. Like he just fits that mold that we really don't have much on this roster. And he looks 6'3", 300. Right. You need a couple guys like that. You need just a couple guys that you can't push around. So to me, it's almost like a Pavey, just because until we find that next Benton, and maybe it's Howard, maybe it's Dylan Johnson, but until you find it, you got to find it.
Do you think that it's a miss if we don't land a running back in this class, or are you okay with us not getting, if we don't land Lewis and we don't go after anybody else, are you feel like you're okay with that given what we had last year?
That's a great question. I do. And I actually asked Matt McNamara the same thing. He was on the show yesterday, and he said, as of right now, it's Byron Lewis or bust. That's what's been communicated to him. So it tells you the staff is okay with it. I do, because here's the thing. I think, and we've seen it, I think running backs are easier to get in the portal than other spots. So if you're a little low on depth, we've seen him get a Chaz, we've seen him get a Tywee. I think you can get those guys easier. And quite frankly, you brought in 3 guys last year that I'm really high on, and those guys are going to be here for 3 years. So if you could make the argument, man, if you don't get a guy today or this year, it's more likely those players don't transfer, right? It's more likely those guys have roles and then they stay in the program.
And then you focus on it more next year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I actually think it's really not a big deal. Normally you'd look at a Wisconsin class like, okay, we need to make sure we get running backs, but I mean, we got 3 good guys last year, and you're right. I feel like it's okay to skip a year. Like it's fine. I would much rather have 2 more D linemen than 1 more running back. 100. That's all day. I mean, any day of the week, just give me more D linemen and I'm okay. Because listen, across the board, otherwise, O linemen looking good, linebackers looking good, cornerbacks looking good, and we've got a lot of good athletes in this class. We don't need a running back, and I'm okay with it. Which is why I thought I thought about Byron Lewis, but I didn't want to put him as my important because I really don't think that's important. I get the D lineman all day. That's got to be the focus.
Marty Griffin in the chat, really good friend of the show. I hope he's doing well. Finally caught one live. Fickell's first class will be the best in school history to date. Vegas has us at 6.5. Smash that over. I know we're both on the over of 6.5.
I mean, that's obvious. I'm on the over at 6.5.
Regime is obviously there, but I'm obviously there too. Like we're both on the over 6.5.
And Marty, I was on the golf course this morning. It was great. I hope you got to play sometime. Get to play this weekend, maybe.
This is from ZYT. Ryan looks exhausted. Take a rest between all the candidates.
Ryan has got a lot going on in his personal life right now. He is a hardworking man, this guy. Oh,
man. Thank you for tuning in, ZYT. I appreciate it, man. But listen, I've said it before, like Hunter Wohler, we're not missing any reps here. Any last thoughts, man, on we got Nathan Hammond in here, preach Rajiv. I'm not even sure what you're preaching about at this point, but it's probably over 6.5.
Over 6.5.
Yeah. I had a thought with Torrin Petaway too. I kind of just love this theory that he went over there to waste their time, and he always knew he was coming back. Like they recruited him, they didn't waste time on another defensive lineman. Maybe they missed out on a prospect. Maybe he gained a little intel.
Yeah, he was going to just be a spy for a couple months, right. Just like go in and check out what's going on over there. I mean, listen, PJ Fleck, I'm sorry, just not a guy that I'd ever want to play for, and I would imagine most people don't, and that's fine with me. You should come to Madison if you're good. Yeah,
I agree, but Justin always says the same thing, and I always tell Justin his target audience is not a 42-year-old guy, right? Like I'm always like I wouldn't want to play for that dude. He seems like just a ridiculous cartoon character, but then I realized I'm not his target audience, right? His target audience is 17-year-old high school kids. It's a different target audience than we are, right? I think that act probably works a little better for some of those. Any other thoughts or comments, Rajiv?
I do want to put up John Berger's put a couple comments in here about this guy, so I want to bring up kicker. You want to kicker more than anything. We've got a Coles 5-star coming this weekend, number 1 in kickoffs, through the upright, number 1 punter. I mean, listen, we talked about special teams and what these guys can bring to special teams, and we don't talk about special teams enough. And kicking is something that we really could get. It's not anything we ever think about all the recruiting shows we've ever done together. We don't talk about kicking, and it's important, and it's such a massive piece. And John, thank you for bringing it up. And yes, we do have a kicker coming this week.
Good comment here from Forrest Aguirre too. Class rank will drop, but some of those 26 and 27 athletes are going to notice the buzz. That's a great point. Right? Because recruiting is a lot about buzz. Recruits look at recruiting rankings. They look at who's in classes. And if you start landing at Hilton, you start landing at Posa, and these recruits are all connected. All these recruits are in the same recruiting type chats. They're all talking to rivals guys. The more exposure, the more buzz you have, the easier it is to land future guys. Like this is all connected.
The rich get richer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan? Like you said, the class this year, top 20, fine. Not knowing the players or not, just in general, what do you think Fickell's ceiling in the next 3 years can be for recruiting class rankings? Or do you believe there is like a hard ceiling against some of those upper echelon blue bloods?
Man, I know, and not that he would ever watch this. I know if Max heard what I'm about to say, or Pat, they would probably laugh at me. I just think it's too hard, man. I think 15-ish is about the ceiling. I really do. Maybe 10 to 15, someone. So maybe a 12, a 13, somewhere in there. I think it's too hard to crack into the top 10 if you're Wisconsin because you said in the next 3 years, right? I don't think we're winning a national title in the next 3 years. I don't think we're going to be at that point. Until you string a couple titles together, I don't think you're going to have the cachet to break into that top 10.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is the top 10 in the next 3 years. And I think that it's more or less like it's going to have to be like a special recruiting cycle. There's going to have to be some guys. We're going to have to bring in a 5-star, something that would really changes the game. But it's there because I think what they're selling is clearly working. There is that like new cachet that you brought up. And no, we're not those SEC schools, but Wisconsin does have some inherent advantages of being Madison's a great city. You know, I'd lived there. Many of you probably have, like many of you either do or you have. It's a great place and it is a selling point. And yes, there's winter and yes, there's cold, yes, there's issues, but I do feel like when you have that kind of coaching pedigree and when you know that coach took a Cincinnati to the playoffs, that's something these guys know too. This Luke Fickell has instant credibility when he's talking to these guys, and his coaching staff does, because they're like, yeah, we've sent a lot of guys to the NFL. Oh, and also we've been in the playoff. Like we know what we're doing, and I just feel like that there is a ceiling there. I'm not saying it's going to necessarily happen, but to me, that's the ceiling.
Yeah, and P says no top 10. P's been on me to be a little more optimistic. He says he believes. Sebastian
He always
says top
believes.
15. I hear you, and then I look at because everything you said is correct, right? Everything you said is correct. Fickell has that cachet. There's a lot of advantages to Madison. Obviously, Pat and Max are incredible. Casey Rybaka too, like they're incredible. However, then I go and look at like a Sharon Moore who's never coached, and his first 7 recruits are 4-star guys because he's just at Michigan, right? Like
who won a national title? Yes, I mean that's
my point,
deal,
right? Like they won the title. Bama, Georgia, these schools that have either won it or played in it or been in it, or they're in just target-rich environments, right? Where if you're in Florida, you can throw a rock and hit a 4-4 cornerback, right? Brian Smith's on the show, he talks about that all the time. USC is always going to be up there. It just feels like these other schools are too entrenched in that range. But I've always said this, if Wisconsin can get into that 10 to 15 range, if they can get around 15, you can win a title at 15 if you get the special quarterback. So, and that's what Wisconsin hasn't ever been able to do, is consistently be in that range. So if he can get into that range, Rajiv, like you and I are on the same, we're on the same wavelength then in terms of the program ceiling. Like I think that elevates the entire ceiling of the program if they can stack classes in that range. And I do think they can do that, which if you're a Badger fan, that should be incredibly exciting. Like imagine how exciting it would be for Iowa fans if they were getting consistent, like top 18 class, top 15 class. They would be through the moon. So if we can get to that point, Rasheed, we are separating from that tier that we've been living in, and we're getting closer to that tier we're trying to break into.
Yep. And in order to do that, you got to take, that's a big step you got to take. And you're right, you can win a title when you're there. Like that's kind of that entry point into the title contenders and what you can do. And now, I mean, obviously we in the playoff brings a whole new world into this, because you expect as a Badger fan, now that it's a 12 team, you expect to be in there. I mean, we would have been in there multiple times had it been a 12 teamer. So like, and once you're in a playoff like that, anything can happen. You might have a home game. Now all of a sudden you're going into this quarterfinal. Like anything can happen at that point. That's what
we talk about with March Madness too, though. And Badger fans are tired of getting to March Madness.
We still got 2 couple Final Fours. It's okay. It can happen. It can happen again.
Oh man, he is Rajiv. I'm Ryan. We're gonna wrap it up. It's already 40 minutes, which is longer than we usually keep you. But this is big news. All right, it's not every day we get to talk about a 4-star receiver. It's not every day I get to chop it up with Rajiv, who is one of the most quality guys out there. So appreciate everybody in the chat on Wisconsin. Rajiv, any last thoughts?
No, man. Let's go. Let's get some more. Fill this class.
Love it. He is Rajiv. I'm Ryan. Have an incredible weekend. Have an incredible Father's Day. Be safe, be happy. And I think for both of us, thank you.